Hello and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for today's latest webinar from Ipsos UK. This time the webinar is on digital immersive experiences. My name is Becky Goodfield and I head up our media development team, which is our custom media research team here at Ipsos in the UK. So it's well documented that the term digital immersive experiences and the word metaverse have grown in prominence and in recognition over the past 12 months. During this time, investment in technology, people and development have soared, and many brands, organisations and companies have either launched or are planning the future of their products and their services for an increasingly immersive digital space. The technology and the opportunities the technology brings are seemingly immense. But what about consumers? So the general population, the people who buy our products, who use our services, or who are the audiences for our media platforms and our content. Many of these people may not even have heard of digital immersive experiences yet. Many of them may be interacting within them in a whole range of different ways. There'll be many different barriers to use and a whole host of different triggers to engagement. So alongside the technology, actually, a real understanding of these consumers is absolutely critical to the future of digital immersive experiences in terms of how, when, and with whom the technology can continue to progress. So it's consumers that we've decided to focus on today. We have a really packed agenda. So starting first with our very own CEO, Kelly Beaver, and Kelly's going to provide some context to the overall presentation through an understanding of public attitudes and how these are changing over time. We then have three more of our Ipsos experts. So we have Steve Johnson, Fionn Thomas, and Jordana Moser. And then finally, we're really pleased to be joined today by Stefan Kint from Nokia, who has the fantastic job title of Technology Evangelist. And Stefan will be joining us to tell us a bit more about what Nokia are focusing on and where we're going from their point of view. So let's begin, and over to Kelly.
Thanks, Becky. So before we get started today on the exciting world of immersive experiences, I thought I would talk a little bit just about Britain's broader relationship with technology and digital life today. So it's not new news for me to tell you that the internet is a really integral part of how public lives their lives, but yet the extent to which we've been entrenched in it for the past 2 decades, we've seen actually quite a major shift over the course of the pandemic now, with more and more of the UK population being considered online. We have a tool at Ipsos called the Ipsos Iris tool, which allows us to passively measure digital behaviours online. And from that, we can see that now there are over 3 million more people online, and over 1 million of those new users are actually people over the age of 75. So we have increased online penetration, but if we have a look at our Consumer Digital Index, which we conducted alongside Lloyds Banking Group, we can see there is still a high proportion of the population who lack basic digital skills, 12.6 million UK adults. And also, if you look at again that population of the over 75s, they're 3 times less likely to have the most basic level of digital skills. So what do we mean when we say digital skills? Well, can you set up a connection to a Wi-Fi network on any device? Can you open an internet browser and use the websites? And also, how are you storing your passwords? Is it still written down in a tiny book? Some of those things are indicators of people's wider digital literacy and skills. But regardless of skill level, it's not going to surprise you to see that we are definitely immersed in the online world. Amongst all age groups, 4 and 5 say they can't imagine life now without the internet, and 3 and 4 say they're constantly looking at screens these days. 2 and 3 saying they spend far too much time online or looking at screens. And our relationship with technology is actually quite conflicting, and we see this through some of our global trends data. You can see that people say yes, it's too much, but they can't quite step away. You can see here 3 and 4 say it generally makes life better, 2 and 3 agreeing that we need modern technology because this can help us solve future problems. But look at that orange line. Nearly half are saying that they fear technical progress is destroying our lives, and check out how it's actually changed over the last almost a decade. rising from 3 in 10 back in 2013 to almost half today. So how are the British public interacting with technology after we've had a period where limited face-to-face contact became quite the norm? Well, this data is yet to be shared publicly. You're getting a sneak peek today. It was collected very recently, and we went back and asked people, how have your behaviours changed since the pandemic? And it's really interesting. I find this chart quite enlightening. Under half of the British public now say that they're spending more time looking at screens than they were before the pandemic. And look at what's happening to face-to-face interactivity. So 1 in 3 say they leave their homes less, and a further 3 in 10 saying that they see their family and friends less. So some of the reasons behind this will be things like a lag in the behavioural reset after the pandemic. It may never go back quite to those pre-pandemic levels, but some of these changes in behaviours and the reasons why they're sticking slightly more than we might have anticipated are also because of the context we find ourselves in post-pandemic. So interestingly, again, looking at the issues index, which is something we've been running at Ipsos now since 1974, we asked the public spontaneously, what are the biggest issues you see facing Britain today? And it gives you an idea of what's top of mind in the public's context and concern. Top of mind, what's in their pockets? What's happening to prices, to inflation, concerns about the economy? And it's in that kind of context that we are seeing now some of the ways in which we're living our lives perhaps not quite go back to the way it was post the pandemic. There are flip sides to how this economic cost of living concern will actually manifest. So yes, some of the things I just showed you, like perhaps a reduction in people's discretionary spending and how that impacts on both their travel, their socialization, how they spend on going out and meeting friends, etc. But the flip side for this, from a perspective of technology, is actually for some individuals in our society, they will find it increasingly difficult to engage and to purchase the kind of technology which becomes available on the market over that time. And actually our Consumer Digital Index, as of May this year, found that just over a third of UK adults say that this rising cost of living is going to impact their ability to go online, a figure which may only increase as we go into the winter months and some of the economic hardship really comes to life. So this said, the British public have not lost sight of the importance of technology and digital skills. Over 7 in 10 say digital skills are going to be more important in the next 12 months, and half saying that they themselves are interested in actually gaining more digital skills over the next 12 months. Young people even more likely to say that. It's as high as 3 in 4 for those in the 16 to 24 age category. So what are we going to expect to see in terms of areas of focus in the digital landscape over the next 12 months and beyond? Well, this is quite interesting. Look at the top 2 in this chart. 1 in 5 Britons say that they expect to see in the next 2 years is the integration of the metaverse into our day-to-day lives. Almost 1 in 10 say they already see it. And it's not just Gen Z who think this. The predictions of the 16 to 24-year-olds are largely in line with the rest of the population. And then down the bottom and to the flip side, you can see 1 in 4 are really yet to be convinced. But I do want to point out that back in 2000, when we did a study for Which, actually we found that nearly an identical proportion of people said they wouldn't be on the internet either. And of course, as you saw from my first slide, that is definitely not the case today. So what is the metaverse? What's it going to look like if it forms part of daily life? For this, I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Steve Johnson, who's the Director of Qualitative Research and Media Development. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Kelly. As Becky mentioned, everyone is talking about digital immersive experiences and the metaverse, but what do these terms actually mean? So the metaverse has been one of the hottest buzzwords of last year. In 2021, internet searches for the term increased by over 7,000%. And a lot has been said by what it is and how it will evolve. And to Kelly's point, it's inspired both excitement and skepticism. So it's important to remember that the metaverse is just one part of wider move towards immersive experiences. And brands are investing heavily in immersive experiences. It's like a new gold rush comparable to the .com boom. But on the other hand, governments and users are raising privacy and security concerns, and they're questioning the impact on society. And there are still many questions on what they will be and how it will impact on people. So besides the uncertainty, it's clear that a move towards more immersive digital experiences cannot be ignored. So when we talk about these words, what do we actually mean? Digital immersive experiences often bring to mind VR. I think everyone's first thought is Ready Player One. All of us in a dystopian future with headsets on and haptic feedback suits, never leaving our homes. And VR can be an immersive experience, but not all immersive experiences are VR. So when we think more of AR, of XR, and how these things can join together. And that's where you get the metaverse. It's the combination of these things. It's a persistent and immersive simulated world that is experienced by the first person by large groups of simultaneous users. So if you have kids, or if you're a child at heart like me, you're probably aware of some of the existing metaverses. Roblox is a prime example of a space where it's always on. People can go in, build their own areas, build their own games, socialize with their friends, with other people, with their family, all in an online experience. They trade digital devices. Neon unicorns, if you've got kids, might ring a bell. For everyone else, you don't know what I'm talking about, but they trade these digital items that mean a lot to them within these spaces. But there are lots of other metaverses as well. In the gaming sphere, I think is probably the most obvious. We think a lot about Fortnite, about Decentraland. There's lots of different ones that are being used. And Roblox is primarily entered using traditional 2D devices, but others allow for the use of VR, which is a more immersive experiences. And brands are investing in this. Governments, brands, and users are betting on the idea that this is going to succeed. So it's the next frontier of communication and consumption. So, for example, the South Korean government has invested 177 million in a public metaverse. Brands such as Adidas, Vans, and Gucci have already started experimenting with marketing campaigns and experiences. But as businesses are looking to build or launch products within more immersive experiences, they need to know where consumers are at, not just where the tech is at. So we're doing a lot more research in this consumer area to really understand that. So I'm going to pass over to Fionn, who's going to tell you a bit more about what we've been doing.
Thank you, Steve. So as we build and experiment in a more immersive internet, it's vital that we're thinking about the consumer needs in this space. So that's what we're going to do in this presentation today. We're going to go through two recent studies that we've conducted. The first one is a syndicated piece of research that we're running here at Ipsos. It's called the Immersive 3E Tracker. And the second one is a custom piece of research that we've run with Nokia, looking at Gen Z and how they're engaging with the metaverse in particular. So I'm going to let Steve and Stefan go through the results from the Nokia study a bit later. And to begin with, I'm going to give a brief overview of what we're covering in the tracker and what we found so far. So the main objective of our tracker is to measure engagement, enthusiasm, and an evolution towards an immersive internet. It's an online study that's nationally representative of GB adults aged 16 to 75. And we've also recently added a new sample of younger teens aged 13 to 15, because we know they're really at the forefront of how immersive experiences are currently being used. The tracker is run quarterly, so far it's been run in the summer, in July, and in October, our autumn wave, and also we'll be running another wave in January and in April, and it's available for subscription as well. What we're covering in the tracker are the behaviours and attitudes towards immersive experiences. We're looking at the barriers to uptake, and also we're looking at opportunities for different types of brands and industries in this space. And we also have the ability to profile and segment based on a wide range of different demographics, whether that's by age, by gender, a whole range, but also we're able to segment by some specific audiences of interest, like gamers, influencers, and creators. Next slide, please. Thanks. So a key output of our tracker is a segmentation that we've run on the consumers. So this is based on enthusiasm and engagement for immersive experiences, and is comprised of these 4 metrics: awareness of the metaverse, agreement that the metaverse is for me, agreement that immersive experiences are better than online today, and when consumers think that the metaverse will be part of our day-to-day lives. And from this, we're able to segment the audience into these 4 key groups. The first one being those that are already all in, so a relatively small amount amongst 13 to 75s at the moment. The second group being those that are interested, and the third group, those that are currently questioning, and then a group that aren't engaged at all. And what we find is, whilst awareness of the metaverse is low, engagement in immersive is often actually higher than we think. So there's a misunderstanding of some of the terminology that leads to an underestimation of how much people are actually using immersive experiences at the moment. In summer, we found that 29% of 16 to 75s knew at least a little about the metaverse, but actually around the same amount was saying that they were engaging in some way with VR and AR, for example. And for sure, it's something that's driven by the youngest ages, but it's not just for them. So what we've seen in our data is that 50% of 16 to 24s know at least a little about the metaverse. When we get to 25 to 34s, it drops down to 4 in 10, and then it's around 37% for 35 to 44s. So there's still a clear opportunity for some of the older age groups here. A quarter of 35 to 44s say that the metaverse is for them, while this obviously is higher amongst some of the younger age groups who are really the early adopters. 4 in 10 of 16 to 24s saying that the metaverse is for me. So often cynics, or those not partaking already in immersive experiences, can think of it as a way of escaping from the real world problems. But actually what we find when we talk to consumers about why they're using the metaverse or using immersive experiences is that they're seen as an opportunity to really connect with others. So as the lines between the online world and the offline world have blurred, a lot of the social interactions that we used to think of as purely offline are now taking part online. And this is particularly true for some of our younger generations who are spending a lot more time interacting socially in virtual worlds. So really, social connection is a key driver to why people are using immersive experiences. And there's great optimism about the opportunity that immersive experiences provide to connect with others. 44% of 13 to 75s agree that it will be easier to meet more diverse people in a virtual world, while 4 in 10 of 13 to 75s believe it's a better way of connecting with friends and family. And if we think about the most popular use cases that people are saying that they've done in an immersive experience, often they're things that are done with friends. So spending time with friends, playing games with friends are the top 2 things that people say they've done in an immersive experience. And this is compared to the bottom end of the scale, which is actually lived a virtual life that's different than my own. But this is where so much of the coverage sits sometimes. So if we think about the #1 driver for using immersive experiences is to connect with others, then on the flip side of this, the biggest barrier is actually not being able to connect with others. So 31% of 13 to 75s said that the reason why they hadn't interacted in a immersive experience so far was because nobody that they know uses it. Tech and understanding are 2 other big barriers. And one of the great things about our tracker is that we're able to really drill down into different audiences, look at the opportunity by different types of people. And one of the big things we found is that for women, there is a much bigger barrier to taking part in immersive experiences. The top 2 that are most different from men are these ones here. So this idea of connection is a much bigger barrier for women than it is for men. And the second is around understanding. I'm not sure what I would do in an immersive experience is higher for women than it is for men. And really what this shows is that use cases for immersive really aren't as clear yet for women as they are for men. And indeed, when we look at knowledge of the metaverse, there is a pervasive gender gap in awareness that we see across all age groups. So when we actually introduce people then to the range of activities that are available in an immersive experience, we see that there is great consumer interest in a wide range of different activities. So I'm just going to go through a handful of those now and some of the opportunities that we see for brands and industries. So amongst those that haven't already taken part, exploring another city or landmark, watching a concert, movie or show, or attending a course to learn a new skill are the top 3 things that people would be interested in doing. And this opens up opportunities for enhancing travel offers, for providing virtual entertainment, providing learning experiences in a virtual environment too. And just to deep dive a little bit into this idea of watching an event in a virtual world versus in a physical world, we see that amongst Gen Z, amongst 16 to 24s, 35% say that they would rather watch a concert in a metaverse than in a live music venue. And we actually asked people as well what they thought was better or worse for an event in a virtual world versus in a physical world. Some of the things that people said were better were they believed that it would be safer than in a physical world, and also more accessible for people with disabilities. And when we think about the fact that the past 3 years we've been told that, you know, to stay away from crowds, it's hardly surprising that people see that level of safety more in a virtual experience than a physical one. But some of the things that people accept that they're compromising on, so some of the things that people think would be worse in a virtual event over a physical one, are engaging with other people and the atmosphere of the event itself. So a couple of things for organisers to consider there when creating a virtual live event. And as Kelly mentioned earlier, still since COVID-19, people are spending a lot more time more time at home, less time leaving their house, and a big element of this is for work. So a lot of people spending less time at the office, more of a combination of working remotely and working at the office. Today, because of the tube strikes, we're all presenting from our houses. And this is a really good opportunity for immersive as well. And brands are already offering solutions for this. So both Meta and Microsoft have both outlined their vision for a more immersive way of working. And people are already taking part as well. So over half have or would be interested in attending a work or professional meeting in an immersive experience. And some of the things that people believe would be better are networking, ability to work without distractions, and collaboration on projects. So when we think about the immersive internet, all the different things that Steve mentioned earlier around AR, VR, 2D virtual worlds, we see that retail is really a key opportunity area for purchasing, whether it's using AR in the purchase journey, VR in the purchase journey, buying virtual products for the use in the virtual world or physical products. There's a great opportunity for retail, and we see that all people are already taking part in this. So almost a quarter have purchased something either for use in the physical or virtual world, and almost the same amount of people haven't yet but would be interested in purchasing something for use in the physical or virtual world. And there's a great optimism as well for shopping in more immersive experiences. 37% say that immersive will make shopping better. And we also asked people what types of purchases they've been making, what purchases they were interested in making, and there's a whole range of things that people are interested in. The top 2 things that we see are fashion and entertainment. So Jordana in a second is going to go through more of the sort of identity and how fashion plays a role there. But entertainment was one thing I mentioned a bit earlier, of some of the things that people are most interested in actually doing in immersive experiences. And then when we look at the bottom of the list, again, it's kind of the things that we regularly think about when we think about immersive purchases. So NFTs and virtual real estate, relatively small amount of people have or are interested in purchasing these. So obviously not zero, still people interested, but small compared to some of the like fashion, entertainment, other elements. So what I've gone through now is a sort of snapshot look at some of the things that people are interested in, what people are already doing, some of the things people are interested in buying. I'm going to hand over to Jordana now to talk us through identity in Immersive and some of the opportunities for brands there.
Thanks, Fionn. So a core part of your immersive online experience will be your three-dimensional virtual persona, also known as an avatar. So avatars themselves are not necessarily new. They've been a big part of video games, and more recently, your Bitmojis or Memojis that you might use in text messages. But the immersive web will expand the role of avatars because they'll be sort of the form through which you'll engage with all the activities that Fionn just described. As of this past July, about 1 in 5 British adults have created at least one avatar. So this ranges from 40% of our 16 to 24-year-olds to just 10% of those 56 to 75. So having the agency and ability to decide exactly how you want to inhabit a virtual space can be a really powerful experience. 1 in 4 members of the public agree that they are more comfortable being themselves in a virtual world than they are in real life. And as you can see in that chart, this figure jumps to 55%, so just over half of our 16 to 24-year-olds. As one might expect, this decreases a bit with age and is something that only 1 in 10 of those 56 to 75 agree with. So what might be driving this heightened sense of comfort? Our qualitative research, which Steve will take you through in a bit more detail shortly, showed us some of the ways in which an avatar gives people a sense of freedom to express themselves however they want, with some seeing this as an opportunity to show the real them, or the person they maybe feel they should be or could be in the physical world. So for example, some people we spoke to said they were pretty shy in the physical world, and they maybe didn't feel as confident going up to people or introducing themselves, but they felt like an avatar gave them the opportunity to be more forward and outgoing in a way that they just didn't really feel comfortable offline. There were others we spoke to who felt an online presence allowed them to express their gender identity more accurately, and others still who liked being able to present in a way that had no bearing on their appearance in the physical world. So to that point, a meaningful avatar doesn't necessarily mean one that sort of identically matches your physical form. So about 1 in 4 of our respondents did say that to them, a meaningful avatar would look as much like them as possible. The other 3/4 were evenly split between wanting it to look mostly like them with a few different features, but also not wanting it to look like them at all. So to understand more about what features are considered salient to people when designing an avatar, regardless of its likeness to their real-world appearance, we asked all of our respondents whether they thought each of these 10 elements were important or unimportant. So at a population level, hair color and texture, facial features, clothing, skin tone, and body size were all considered to be important by about half of our respondents, with accessories receiving the fewest mentions from about 3 in 10. But interestingly, when we look at this data just from our 16 to 24-year-olds, what we see is that the number of mentions each feature receives jumps. So in other words, more people found more things important when creating a meaningful avatar. So what we can learn from this is that, particularly for the young people, cultivating a meaningful representation of the self, which, as a reminder, to our 16 to 24-year-olds, or for more than half of them anyway, they said they're more comfortable doing online versus in real life. It has a lot to do with that virtual physicality, so the visual signals they're sending to other users as they move through online spaces. Something we're really interested to watch evolve is how brand loyalties will manifest in the virtual world. So brands like Liverpool FC, Nike, Levi's, and Vans, among others, are already investing in making their brands available for avatar creation on platforms like Roblox and Bitmoji. And with 2/3 of our 16 to 24-year-old respondents saying that clothing is something that they consider important to them, and as Fionn said, fashion was a really key area of interest for purchase in Immersive, it seems like this could be sort of a really worthwhile way for brands to sort of start dipping a toe in the water of exploring their role in the immersive internet. So I'll now turn over to Steve and Stefan to take us through where the future lies for Immersive.
Thanks, Jordana. Excuse me. So we've been focusing a lot on the immersive experiences more broadly, but now I'm going to talk specifically about some work that we did with Nokia on the metaverse amongst Gen Z. And then we're going to talk about where that might be heading. So as we've hopefully demonstrated, the immersive web is already here. Consumers are using aspects of it, particularly our younger generations, but the full metaverse vision is not yet here. There are barriers to it being part of our day-to-day lives, both on the consumer side, but also on the technology side. But from a consumer's perspective, there is an expectation that the metaverse will be here soon. So 1 in 3 believe that it will be part of their day-to-day lives in the next 5 years. But will it meet their expectations? The oldest members of Gen Z are now 25. As a generation, they're coming of age, joining the workforce and living through their most formative years, leaving them ready to start shaping institutions and countries as the leaders of tomorrow. So we were asked by Nokia to explore how do they currently work, play and socialize in the metaverse, and how they see it developing in the future, and what role do they want it to play. As part of our qualitative research, we realized there's a lot going on here. So we split it into 3 parts. Initially, we decided to look at what was already out there. So we looked at existing research with Gen Z and also the metaverse to find out what people think of it. We then conducted a semiotic analysis on the metaverse to understand how in pop culture it's been represented and what role does that play in how people see it now. Then obviously it was very important to speak to Gen Z themselves. So we recruited 24, 16 to 25-year-olds in each of 5 markets to conduct an online community where we started by understanding what they currently do, how they socialize, how they interact online, and eventually talking more about what we would class as metaverse experiences or immersive experiences. Then for those that were actually doing these things already, we joined them in there. So we conducted play-alongs on the platforms they use, such as Roblox, Decentraland, Rec Room, Fortnite, Sandbox. And we played along to understand what drives them to play and socialize in these spaces. And while the majority of our play-along sessions were conducted via smartphone or desktop, as did the participants, we also joined a number of sessions using VR headsets to try and understand what that adds in terms of immersive experiences. And finally, to understand what they wanted from the future, we decided to put them in the metaverse. So we asked all of our participants, regardless of their previous experiences, to join us in a metaverse workshop. So we used a platform called Spatial.io, which allows you to design a digital immersive space that you can move around within and interact with each other using spatial sound. So if I'm in one corner of the room and you're not standing next to me, you won't be able to hear my conversation. So ultimately, consumers see immersive as an opportunity to further connect with others, but tech is really central to this. The high association between technology and the metaverse amongst our Gen Z means that accessibility is a key concern. VR is seen as being both integral to locking the full potential of the metaverse, but currently unaffordable for most. And especially there's a barrier for the less tech forward as well, of just how to use these devices. Gen Z's expectations for the metaverse are reliant on access for all. Socialization, community, and connection is what distinguishes the metaverse from other online spaces. Meaning it's not accessible to all, it loses value for Gen Z. And this played out in our research. Our Gen Z loved the novelty of the workshops. As I said, the platforms allow for spatial rooms with sound and recreate the experiences of a physical building. But this came with some confusion at first. They weren't familiar with virtual space that tries to recreate the experience of physical life rather than circumvent it. But once settled, they found it fairly intuitive to walk around to the required rooms and take part in the sessions that we had designed. But our Gen Z also experienced technical difficulties, stemming mostly from their own poor internet connections, older devices that just didn't have the processing power to deal with this metaverse platform, or the knowledge of how to use the platform itself. And this highlighted to the participants the potential inequality of a future metaverse, with those that can afford the best tech or live in a market with the best infrastructure are going to have the best experiences, and those who are less tech savvy or with it less access are going to miss out on these things. So Gen Z has been cultivating global, passionate and active communities around shared interests and values on platforms like Twitch, TikTok and Discord, and in virtual spaces like Minecraft, Roblox and Fortnite for years. And this has left them well prepared and best positioned to shape the metaverse into an extension of the real world that embodies some of the values that they hold most dear: representation, equality, escapism, creativity and community. Gen Z are digital natives and their expectations of the technology are bound to rise at a high pace, and the hype around the metaverse and the expectations to deliver are incredibly high. And the technology needs to keep up with Gen Z's desire for immersive, accessible virtual environments. But at the same time, the metaverse must reflect their priorities. They're likely to reject a centralized vision of the metaverse. They're mistrustful of corporations. They've been used to an internet which allows unrestricted freedom and anonymity, and they're conscious of the negative perceptions of the metaverse in popular culture. So they will prefer a metaverse which is decentralized and democratized. So I'm going to pass you over to Stefan now, who's going to talk about what could be coming next and the role that Nokia is playing in the creation of future metaverse technologies.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. At Nokia, we don't believe in a single metaverse. We actually believe in multiple metaverses, each catering for different use cases and communities. In general, we see them falling into three different categories. There is the industrial metaverse, there is the enterprise metaverse, and then there is the consumer metaverse. And take an example, an entertainment company, for example. Yeah, they may create a virtual theme park in a consumer metaverse while running metaverse applications for their employees, say for collaboration or for content creation on a completely different platform. Nevertheless, these platforms, they will show some commonalities among them. So the metaverses, the different ones, the different platforms will connect to one another to some degree. They will be sharing technologies, they will be sharing devices and interfaces. But ultimately, they will be defined by the application they use and the business models they adopt. So some metaverse activities are much further along when it comes to creating the business case and basically turning then into some form of ROI, which means showing a different justification for their existence. So consequently, the different metaverses, they won't realize at the same pace. They will have their own paces. So why were we looking into Gen Z? Well, Gen Z is not only the main cohort actually being part as a consumer, as they are now, and Steve explained that, as they are now entering the work life. They are also the engineers and probably also the executives, which will bring the metaverse to life. So as the metaverse will have much bigger impact on industry and enterprise with their use cases, this is where our immediate focus in Nokia lies. And certainly Nokia has a key role to play in creating a great user experience in there. So there will be no metaverse, whether industrial metaverse, enterprise metaverse, or consumer metaverse, without advanced networks. And therefore, key elements for Nokia's Technology Vision 2030 are grounded in systems on which these business-focused metaverses depend on. So there is private wireless networks, 5G evolution towards 5G advanced and 6G. There is edge and cloud computing, there is digital twin technology, AI sensing, and many other technologies for security, privacy, and many more. And this drives our tech strategy, which is the platform for our product innovation across all of our business groups. So armed with these and other technologies, the metaverse will revolutionize how businesses create and make their products, how they will deliver their services, reach their customers, and manage their assets and resources. What's more, the foundation we built for the industrial and enterprise metaverse, this will also support then the consumer metaverse as this emerges. So since Nokia Bell Labs actually invented the transistor 75 years ago, we've witnessed the complex interplay between business invention and consumer invention, and the metaverse will be no different.
Stefan, just want to say a huge thank you for sharing that with us and giving us that insight into Nokia's point of view and the future and focus for you guys. So thank you to you, but also thank you to all of our speakers from today. I know some of you are asking questions in the comments box, but if anyone else wants to do so, then please do. But at this stage, I'd just like to summarise some of the key points that have been made throughout the presentation. So first and foremost, immersive experiences are not just coming, they are already here. So whilst use of the immersive web isn't mainstream, a significant minority are already involved in some way. So according to our segmentation, 7% are what we've defined as all in, but a further 72% are either interested or questioning, and only 21% of the online population are currently not engaged at all. 1 in 3 of that population believe it will be part of our daily lives, our day-to-day lives within the next 5 years. And it's not just about Gen Z, and that's really important to remember. So yes, they are a massively important audience, as Stefan's just told us. They are really important in terms of their higher levels of awareness, their higher levels of usage, but actually a significant proportion among older generations also claim to feel that the metaverse is for them. Immersive experiences do have the potential to unlock a wide range of opportunities. So in particular, we've seen through our tracker the empowerment opportunities of the immersive web. So over half of those aged 16 to 24 claim that they are more likely to be able to feel themselves or be themselves in a virtual world, or more comfortable being themselves in a virtual world than in the real world. And whilst on the surface, at least to me, this felt like a really scary statistic, actually on reflection, it does really show just how empowering the immersive web has the opportunity to be. And it's something that brands really do need to be aware of as they aim to build more authentic connections and experiences with their consumers, and the ability to be able to do so in a place where many people are saying they are more likely to be able to be their true self. We've shown how gaming, travel, entertainment, retail, the workplace are all highlighted as opportunities for digital immersive spaces. And even at this relatively early stage in the journey, 37% of the online population have told us that it can make shopping better. It can also provide access to new people, skills and places that otherwise may not be available to people. And some believe that safety concerns can be overcome. Although, of course, we do need to bear in mind that digital spaces also come with their own safety and privacy concerns too. There's also a number of things to consider when developing products and services for a more digital immersive space. So firstly, social connection. We've seen how this is absolutely key. So people are likely to say that social connection is a trigger to them wanting to use digital immersive spaces. And also we've seen how it can be a real barrier to people taking part when they don't know people who are there. So explore ways of incorporating social connection within the products and services that are being developed, such as shared experiences with people that they know, or being able to share what they've done in those experiences with people afterwards, or make recommendations to people about what they've done so that those people realise the opportunity and can see what's available there. Think about extensions to real world opportunities rather than just solely about complete separations from the real world. So this could be through AR or mixed reality, or it could be through extensions of other activities that you've already got going on in an offline space. Gen Z have told us through our qualitative research that they want you to focus on the values that they themselves hold dear. So importantly, keeping things such as diversity and inclusion, sustainability, and equality of access to all really prominent within your presence when you're developing and being available in these spaces. And remember, it's not just VR, so also consider options that have a lower cost to entry, such as AR and 2D environments. And then finally, be mindful that different demographic groups may need greater support at this stage and explanation of what to do and why when invited by you to access your products and services in this space. So our tracking study has been able to show, for example, a gap between men and women in terms of their barriers. So female consumers may need more explanation, more support and a different type of communication at this moment in time. So then Stefan's presentation was also able to show us some key insights into the technology focus and what's changing there and what Nokia are focusing on. And all of these technological advances will have a profound effect on consumers. So we're really excited to be able to continue to track over time consumer awareness, access, engagement and activities within digital immersive spaces through Ipsos's Immersive 3E tracker. It is actually an international tracker, so whilst we've shared UK data with you today, we do also have information available for other markets, and it's all there for you now, so you can get even more detail than what we've shared today. So we do really look forward to being able to share further updates to the industry in the coming months. So that's everything for our presentation today, and thank you so much for joining us. I know, as I said, that many of you have been sending your questions. So I'm going to pose as many as I possibly can in the time left to the team. So does everyone want to come back on? Hi, give me a second. Cool. Okay, so the first one we have, and I think this one is best directed to Fionn, if okay, and Jordana, you may want to pitch in. But you mentioned during the presentation that there have been 2 waves of the study that you presented. And so I'm just wondering what changes, if any, we've seen between the 2 waves and if we're already seeing changes over time.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we have, obviously we've only done 2 waves so far, so we're going to be tracking it a lot longer than this, but we have already started seeing some changes. So particularly awareness has gone up. Those groups that I spoke about at the beginning, those 4 segments in terms of engagement, they've also shifted as well. We're getting less people saying that they're not engaged at all and more kind of moving through the funnel, as it were, and also just more people sort of maybe less cynics, actually, less people. That data that Kelly showed at the beginning around is never coming. So kind of positive trend really towards people kind of becoming more on board.
We have, a question around the developers of immersive digital spaces. So have we looked at what the growth has been of these types of businesses? Are they still very specialist? And just understanding a bit more about what's going on in that space. And I wondered if that's something that Stefan might be able to answer.
I don't have a number in terms of developers here by heart. What we observe is that we get a growing number of proof of concept preparations with our industrial partners. So there is definitely a growing number. And also as part of the education series which we created, we got good resonance by platform providers building metaverse platforms and showing the broader variety of platforms which are out there. So this is definitely a growing developer community, with even though there is some consolidation as we currently see in the market.
The next question is actually specific to healthcare. The question is understanding about how this might apply to healthcare, to patients and to those engaging with stakeholders in that industry. Does Steve, would you like to take that one?
Sure, yeah. We've seen some really interesting examples of how it's already being implemented. I think surgery, for example, in training, surgeons being able to watch in VR a surgery taking place, like hundreds of them could watch it, whereas they couldn't go into a room, and video doesn't perhaps do it justice. Also looking at how that then integrates with remote technology. So actually using VR and doing the surgery using robots. So that technology is coming along. There's loads of different examples. I could take up the next hour, but as the technology improves, you can see more ways that that's going to be integrated. The idea of digital twinning is something bit more long term, but if you can understand, think like what your Fitbit can tell you now about your heart rate and things like that. In 10 years' time, if it could tell you everything, could you be running tests on your digital twin to find out which drugs are going to be most effective for you, for example?
And Fionn, did you just want to take what it might mean for consumers as well, like in terms of maybe are there any challenges?
So
sorry.
Yeah, so we definitely, obviously, there's challenges to accessibility to that. So, you know, as Kelly went through earlier around like the digital divide at the moment. So definitely like a skills, like a skills barrier. But yeah, we're still kind of at early days of that.
If I can just jump in, I think one of the sides of the healthcare market obviously is the public provided delivery of healthcare on the front line, things like GP surgeries. And what we saw in advance of the pandemic was some early movers towards digital GP appointments. And there was a massive taboo around that in the UK market as the first mover, I think it was GP at Hand at the time, moved into the marketplace, and people were quite skeptical about the ability to deliver that. That skepticism has largely disappeared now, and we are digital GP appointments for a certain proportion of the population, tending to be those with private healthcare, etc., is more commonplace. And this immersive experience of attending a GP with the right kind of technology and capabilities could be something interesting for the future of healthcare service delivery. Obviously, public sector is more challenged from in terms of R&D investment, tech investment, which holds it back from basic frontline services. But you could see this evolving in the private healthcare market, I think.
Thank you. Another question, this one again, probably for Stefan and Steve, but are brands better off creating experience in established metaverses such as Roblox and accepting potentially the limitations of the look and the feel, or do you think we'll see more brands creating more of their own spaces and experiences there?
Shall I go first, Stefan, and you can jump in?
Yeah.
I think it's a very tough one to answer. I think the first point, or the easiest access point, is to use existing ones, and I think we're seeing brands do this already. You know, Fortnite and its collaboration with artists and with Disney, and you know all the skins that they're putting out. That seems like a very easy access point, and Roblox is similar. As it develops and evolves, I think to Stefan's point, if there's not going to be one metaverse, I think even in the consumer realm, that's going to be true too. So we don't know which one's going to be the biggest and most successful one, just like we don't know with social media and things. It changes over time. So there's going to be winners and losers. Some people are going to get it right, create their own spaces, and they're going to be great. Others won't. I think, again, think of it like the .com boom. If everyone jumps on board, some are going to do really well and some aren't so much. And it's your consumers that will decide that, especially Gen Z. They're going to go where the best experience is. The brand loyalty will go out the window if their friends aren't on there and no one else is using it.
Right. Yeah, I would pretty much support what you said, and this is also what we heard in the workshops, in the online workshops, there by the Gen Z in terms of their behavior. And I think in the industrial space it may be a bit different. There you may have more longer-term business relationships and building things, but this is then really, I mean, how does it play into the consumer side? It's basically the technologies which are built there because they bring ROI. So if you have a real return of invest of your development process, of your training process, of your supply chain, then this is something which is very tangible and helps to develop technology. And some of that will definitely spill over into the consumer platforms and being adapted. I think the tricky thing currently for everyone is what is the adoption rate to predict in the consumer space. I guess nobody knows, and with the economical situation and some of the news we get from quarter to quarter, it's something which is crystal ball looking in terms of predicting that. But we are for sure for the next decade, actually until 2030, things will have substantially evolved from where we are today.
Thank you. Next question. What do you think are the risks associated with the shift towards the metaverse? And I think probably Steve and Kelly could probably add some interesting thoughts to this one.
Do you want to go first, Kelly? Oh, I can't hear you.
Kelly, I think you're on mute, if you can hear us.
Brilliant. It was bound to happen once. I was just saying there are risks to any environment, physical, online, and then online immersive experiences as well. And those risks do need managed, and as new environments evolve, the risk mitigation strategies need to evolve with it. And one of the things we've seen in our research with the Global Institute for Women's Leadership actually is about how women are struggling more than men in just not even immersive, but just online environments with harassment and commentary that is perceived to be negative more so than their male counterparts. So there are particular groups which would be more vulnerable also in an immersive experience. So I'll let Steve cover perhaps more detail.
Yeah, and we heard that in our research as well, especially amongst younger audiences. Again, they've been brought up with the internet, and they're very, very aware of the risks that we already have on social media or on, in games, the way that people treat each other, and they just see that even more so with the metaverse. The positive side of it is that they want to change it. Like, again, these are, to Stefan's point, these are going to be the people that will be building it in 10 years time. So hopefully, and if brands are thinking of ways that they can make them feel safe and what things need to be put in place, but it's such early days at the moment. But yeah, I mean, of course, lots and lots of challenges.
Thanks. I think we've got time for one last question. So I think if we could just keep this one quick because we've only got a minute, but some last person's asking whether people tend to be interacting with media kind of alone or within groups within these spaces. So Jordana, did you want to start, and then anyone else can add, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, sure. I think some of the data that Fionn shared really illustrated, and this sort of speaks to what Steve and Stefan were also talking about, sort of the importance of the social element, and how, well, it's not that immersive experiences have to entirely duplicate the physical world. They do need to provide some sort of social value, ideally in sort of a different or complementary way than they can get in the physical world, and that's what makes the virtual experiences, I think, really attractive to people. So I think just keeping that social element in mind will be important.
Yeah, one of the ways, actually, sorry to jump in there, we see already is around gaming in the space. So I showed like a bit of data around that, but we also see people gaming with friends, but also people gaming, with people that they don't know already. So yeah, definitely, as Jordana said, a space for socialization.
Cool. So no time for you, Steve, sorry. But thank you ever so much, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate your time. We hope you've learned a lot, and yeah, very happy to share any more information. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.